All right, hello, and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today I've got a couple of Bitcoin thought experiments that I want to go through and some quite interesting metrics for Bitcoin scarcity. So I'm going to show you that. I've got a bunch of crypto and Bitcoin news to show you, and then we'll take a look at some charts because there are some quite interesting developments on the charts, namely that the dollar here, if we look at this upward sloping red support line, the dollar might have just topped. Now, I'm not saying it has, but if this can get some follow through to the downside, then we could well see the dollar come off and risk come on quite strongly in the not too distant future. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some cycle lows for Bitcoin. We're going to talk about the equity markets. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, sit back, relax, hit that like button, and let's get into this. Did you know the Fed booked a loss of $126 billion in February? So you better opt out and you better do it quickly with Bitcoin, gold, and silver. I put this out yesterday. I said, as per my YouTube videos, the decline into the cycle lows function to flush sentiment and lure in shorts, only to then go and scorch them. We've got an example of that here. Bitcoin is trying to confirm a cycle low where it is. So I said, stay tuned tomorrow to find out what happens next. It seems to me like Bitcoin may well have put in its cycle low. We just need to see a little bit of confirmation and we can jump right in. Have you secured your part? 1.7 million Bitcoin left to be mined. 1.9 million Bitcoin remaining on exchanges. This leaves a total of 3.6 million Bitcoin between now and 2140. Remember that because these 1.7 million Bitcoin that are left to be mined, the final one won't be released until 2140. So we'll all be dead by then. And so I wanted to propose this as almost like a small thought experiment for you. So if we add the two of these, of course, we get 3.6 million Bitcoin left. Divide that by 8 billion people, the population. And there only is possibly enough for every one of these people on Earth to have another 0.00045 Bitcoin per person. And so the idea I wanted to talk about today is, what if the Bitcoin that you and I hold and that is already held by Bitcoiners, what if that Bitcoin is essentially yours now forever and is never going to be given up? So follow me through on this, okay? There are, of course, some people that hold Bitcoin without knowing what they hold or why they hold it. They just bought it because their mate in the pub told them to buy it, or because they thought it would just go up indefinitely and they would get super rich. But over time, Bitcoin moves into strong hands from weak hands, right? It moves towards people with higher conviction and it moves into the hands of people with higher understanding. The longer you hold Bitcoin, the more time and research you spend in the space, the more you realize not only what you hold, but why you hold it. The more you realize that there really is a requirement for this sort of inflation-resistant, censorship-resistant, peer-to-peer currency that stands a chance of separating money from state. And continuing on with this theme, you can see that during every bear market, short-term tourists leave, but an increasing number of Bitcoin network users stick around. And so you can see that whilst there are periods of people that come and go during the tops, where retail foam is in orange, as you can see right at the tops of the price for Bitcoin in black, the trend over time is up and to the right for the number of addresses. Whilst the short-term speculators that do not understand the underlying protocol leave, there is an ever-increasing number of Bitcoiners who do understand not just what they hold, but why they hold it. And over time, Bitcoin becomes more validated as a serious asset class. Every time somebody attacks it, every time a country bans it or bans mining, every attack simply functions to make Bitcoin stronger. Every time an attack fails, Bitcoin gets to laugh in the attacker's face. It also gets to show the rest of the world that this thing is seemingly invincible and continues to be invincible. We also have banks holding it, they're offering it and related services, countries are integrating it as a payment system, and even making it legal tender. So over time, this doesn't look so much like a speculative investment anymore. This looks like it could well be a serious part of the future of money. And so therefore I ask you, what if we were to think of the Bitcoin that you or I hold as yours or mine? Right? Let's say you hold one Bitcoin. That's what's yours right now. You might sell it higher up. If we got a big blow off top move into the middle of this year, perhaps, and it got way overextended, you might take some profit, right? But then the question becomes, what do you do afterwards? Do you just walk away? Are you done with Bitcoin? Are you never going to buy Bitcoin back? You no longer have a requirement for censorship resistant, immutable, permissionless, peer-to-peer, inflation resistant, unconfiscatable money. You no longer have a requirement for any of that. You're just going to walk away and say, I've got all my fiat, happy days, right? You're not going to do that, right? It's much more likely that the only reason you're selling higher up is because you aim to then let the price cool off to a more reasonable level, to a less speculative level, and then buy at least the same amount back, if not more, once the prices come down from those speculative levels. The game is ultimately to accumulate wealth via accumulating the best money available. And that, of course, is Bitcoin. So it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Not only are we not talking about 21 million Bitcoin total divided by 8 billion people, we're talking about a significantly smaller number, because often we take away 3 million coins and say, well, 3 million have been lost forever in the early days. You take away 1 million for Satoshis and you're left with 17 million. And so you say, okay, well, what about 17 million divided by 8 billion people? That number comes out very, very small, and you think there just isn't enough to go around, right? But the number might actually be way, 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 way smaller than that 17 million Bitcoin. There might actually only be 3.6 million Bitcoin divided by the rest of the planet now. And remember, this is between now and 2140 when the last Bitcoin will be mined. So this thing might be significantly scarcer than even I realized. Not to mention, all of the Bitcoin that are currently held by you and I, like I say, could well be ours now. I never plan on giving my Bitcoin up. Do I plan on selling some if we get to overly speculative levels? Yes, of course so. But what am I going to do with that fiat afterwards? I'm going to look to deploy it straight back into Bitcoin with the ultimate goal of accumulating as much Bitcoin as physically possible. And lastly, I'd like to point this out because this was another very interesting metric to me. Did you know currently 900 Bitcoin per day are mined? So how do you get to this number? The current block reward is 6.25 Bitcoin per block, and the blocks come out on average every 10 minutes. So multiply the two together, and that is 900 Bitcoin per day that are being mined and released into the ecosystem. So that's 27,000 Bitcoin per month. At the current 25k price, that is $675 million per month. Now, not all of that $625 million per month is going to be sold into the open market because the miners will keep some. But remember, they can't keep all of it or even a significant chunk of it because they do have very, very large overheads. The electricity is expensive, cooling the machines and maintaining them. They go bang all the time. They need replacement parts, and that's not cheap. So they do have to sell these Bitcoin into the open market to cover their overheads. And furthermore, of course, they have to sell it so that new Bitcoin can be released into the ecosystem. If the miners were just to mine all these Bitcoin and hold it, then how would anyone else be able to get hold of Bitcoin, right? That's $675 million roughly per month that's released into the ecosystem and sold by the miners into the open market. But we know for a fact there are 30 million Bitcoiners. So did you know that if they DCA, dollar cost average, just $23 per month, they will easily buy up all of the newly mined Bitcoin? So the question is, are you DCAing in at least $23 a month? Because I would assume that this is far too little. It seems too little to me as well. I would assume most Bitcoiners are putting in a little bit more than $23 a month. But yet $23 a month is all it takes to hoover up all of the mined Bitcoin. And then if I hop back to this slide here, you can see that there's only 1.7 million left to be mined. And this thing might be even scarcer than we thought. So ultimately, what all of this shows is that whilst we have an ever increasing demand, we also have an ever dwindling supply, an asset that is becoming scarcer by the day, an asset that over time trends up and to the right for people that truly understand it, for people that are here to stay. And more importantly, for people who, like me, and I hope like you, throw down in the comments and let me know, who share a goal to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. So again, you better opt out and you better do it quickly. In other news, according to a Coinbase survey, 80% of Americans believe the current financial system is unfair and needs to change. However, only 20% of those American adults actually own Bitcoin or crypto. According to a Twitter poll here, 88% want Bitcoin Lightning integrated into Twitter. So could we see this coming in the near future? That of course remains to be seen. Over in Lugano, Switzerland, we have a list of merchants on a map that show you all of the places you can pay with Bitcoin: hotels, food, drinks, coffee, so on and so forth. As you can see, Bitcoin is spreading like wildfire in Lugano, Switzerland. Over in Israel, their stock exchange is going to let brokers offer Bitcoin to clients. This is over their stock exchange, as Bitcoin continues to be validated as a serious asset class. Can anyone explain this to me? What is going on with the Bitcoin hash rate? The Bitcoin hash rate has spiked 12.28% in the past 24 hours. So I don't know what's going on with this. I would assume this is just game theory playing out. I would assume we continue to see state-sponsored accumulation of hash as the likes of America, China, Russia all compete and scramble to accumulate as much hash rate as physically possible. And so, from Bitcoin to equity markets, no prior S&P 500 bear market in history has ever made a new low after making 18 consecutive lows above its 200-day moving average, and we are now on day 25. It certainly looks and feels about right for grinding into some sort of apex, but the question is, which direction are we going to go? We are at these critical levels of support, looking to get a bounce off of support. If you're a bear, you want to see this morph into a breakdown over the coming days and weeks. So the dollar, is this going to turn out to be a breakdown, retest and resumption lower, targeting this blue upward sloping support line that goes all the way back here, as you can see? Or is this just going to turn out to be a wick that holds this level? I'll be keeping a close eye on the dollar, looking to see if we can get a rejection somewhere in this 105 to 106 neighborhood. Failing that, if we can crack all the way straight through that, of course, we will run all the way to 107, 108, where I believe the absolute top will be before we can then resume our downward trend. When we enter this downward trend, whether it comes as late as, let's say, March, April, or whether it comes any day now, expect risk to come on massively. This is going to be, in my opinion, the fuel for the final blow off top move that we should see occur in the stock market. If I hop into this melt up chart right now, currently working on breakout retest, looking for that resumption higher. So can we get it? Have we got a bit more chop to do? Have we got a bit more base building on the right hand side of this chart to do before we can start to explode higher? Or is this whole thing going to become invalidated? Are we going to end up coming all the way back down here, back testing this, and then putting in some new sets of lows? That of course remains to be seen. But I think once the dollar can find its top and start to roll over, it's going to be game on for risk assets. The US 10-year yield, is this consolidation before a move higher, or has it found a local top? That of course remains to be seen. Again, I think if we can get towards FOMC, perhaps we got a little bit more hype before FOMC, and then FOMC, perhaps we could see this 25 basis point hike, and that will put all these fears of higher for longer out for the short term. So maybe we'll see this roll over a bit later on. Here's the government 2-year yield. So we'll look to see if we can get a breakdown of this red upward sloping support line. That will be our first early warning sign. Is this going to end up being a double top with this local high from back here? Maybe. That cause remains to be seen. Again, I think we do need to get out to FOMC before we can see what's happening with the yields. But once these eventually do break down, expect risk to come on massively. Bitcoin continues to do Bitcoin things, doesn't it? So we've had what I believe is likely a day 57 cycle low. I think we can move this up underneath here. We are currently looking to break out of this downward sloping red resistance line. I think if we can do this, if we can see some sort of push off of here, a nice big green candle, then we can do what I've been talking about doing for a long time now. We can move the stop up to at least here, if not here. We can add a position and we can look to ride this trend higher over the next 60-day cycle before dropping into our next cycle low due around the end of April. Also keeping a very keen eye on Coinbase, as you can see here, looking to break out from here. If we break out from here, you'll see me add and move the stop up. The same is true of MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy, I don't want to see it lose this prior low, but I think that it is currently working on a breakout. So we'll see if we can get that over the coming days and weeks. Same deal for Riot, isn't it? So looking for this to break out, looking to add a position and move the stops up. Don't really want to see it lose this prior low back here. And the exact same is true of Marathon as well. Looking to see if this can break out. This could be an add and move the stop up. So it's the same deal, isn't it? Like I said, ultimately, I think we just need Bitcoin to show a little bit more follow through just to confirm this, just to give me a little bit more confidence that this was indeed the cycle low and we're not going to come down, because we can't rule out like one more final dip before then going, and then that could end up becoming a day 62 or 63 cycle low. Remember, it's 60 days plus or minus 6 days, which is a 10% tolerance. So just want to make sure that I'm being careful. Just want to make sure that I've got the highest probability set up when I'm moving into these trades. But make sure you're subscribed and turn the notifications on if you want to continue to get updates on all of these trades in real time. In the meantime, patience with gold still playing off, as you can see here. So not much more to say about that. It's the same deal with silver, as you can see here. And interestingly enough, the miners are maybe thinking about breaking out here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Junior miners as well. Is this maybe the start of a breakout retest, perhaps a resumption higher? Is this going to end up giving us an early warning sign? Is this going to be the canary in the coal mine for gold and silver over the coming days? There should be at least a short-term trade on gold and silver coming up, but we do want to see these break out convincingly. So perhaps we could move this in, line this up and say, I'm thinking about going long, but there's just no signal here at the moment. The same is true of silver. This could well be coming in to sweep the liquidity under here. In fact, I'm just noticing, I think I've kind of been sleeping on this because it's not really doing much. But do you remember, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know I talked about sweeping the liquidity underneath these stops here, and it appears that we're right into that neighborhood now. So when I first took the profit from this trade on this breakdown here, I was saying that I wouldn't be surprised to see silver put in a big move that comes all the way back down here. And that was why it was important to protect the profit I had at the time, because I didn't want to let a massive profitable trade end up coming back and stopping me out. And it appears that holding this trade all the way through would have indeed resulted in being stopped there. So really nice example of risk management. You can go back and watch those trades. If you go back and look at the trades, the video I put out around the 21st and the 22nd of November, you'll be able to see this trade executed in real time. And then if you go to the video I posted on the 5th of Jan, you'll be able to see me exit this trade as well in real time and talk about how I was looking for the liquidity under here to be run, which apparently is what we've just done. So that's a really encouraging sign. This tells me that we could well be looking for a short-term trade out of silver over the coming days. Natural gas is getting interesting. Here's natural gas. So there is a candle under there. You can't really see it because of this red line. Hopefully you can see it now. So we're right in here. The big question is, are we going to get rejected? Are we going to get rejected? In which case I don't really want to be anywhere near longs. Or are we about to flip this into support and then start to look to break out? In which case I am more than happy to trade natural gas to the long side for a swing trade over the coming weeks. Here's Tesla. Tesla looks to be possibly considering having a breakout above the top of this blue box. So if it does that, there's a valid long to be taken here out of the top of this box. It'll probably look something like this for Tesla. So you might see me put this on. I'm sort of calling this out. I've been talking about this on and off for a while. I actually got long initially in this neighborhood here on a breakout retest resumption, and then we cut the trade somewhere up here because I said there's a good chance we could roll over sharply, and if we did that, there's no point in giving back all that profit that I had booked. So I said I'd be better off giving up 10 points of potential profit to re-enter on a breakout at the top of this blue box. So we've been sat patiently on the sidelines for a while, which has been fine because it hasn't really done a great deal of anything, and there's nothing to say that it won't continue to do this for a while as well. But at the same time, undeniably Tesla is showing relative strength at the moment, and a breakout above this here is indeed a trigger for a long from me. So looking to do this. If we break out of here, expect me to tell you that I'm going long Tesla. The stop will have to be below this local low back here, and then it will just be a case of seeing what the market can give. Apple, as you can see, not showing the same relative strength as Tesla. It's actually relatively weaker. So is this going to be breakdown, retest, resumption off the bottom of this box? Or are we going to see this thing recover in here, maybe chop around and then look to break out above the top? Similarly with Tesla, if it's to do that, then we can add on a breakout above the top of this blue box here. I may well be interested in that, but I think it's got a little bit of work to do before we can entertain that. UKX, I'm liking what I'm seeing out of UKX at the moment. So the longer we spend underneath this red downward sloping resistance line, the more likely it is of following through once it breaks out. If it just spends a couple of days here and breaks out, then it's quite likely to be a trap. But if we're going to continue to do something like this and bounce off all the way so we can have a nice deep correction and then break out, then that would be quite a nice entry for a long for the FTSE 100. So as it stands, we did well trading this market this year, currently sat on the sideline looking to re-enter. If we can get some more structure built out, then we can entertain moving this to connect this wick here and the bottom here. Maybe that's what's going on. So we'll keep an eye on this, but for now, just sat on the sidelines being patient. I think there is possibly a long trade if we can get a breakout above the downward sloping red resistance line here. But hopefully this can go on for a couple more days or even a week or so, because that will give us a much higher probability of trading the breakout into profit. The US equities, again, still kind of a patience game, isn't it? How good is your patience? Are you able to sit on your hands and wait for a breakout? If so, then you're probably a good trader. But if you're in here going long every time you see a green candle and going short every time you see a red, you're probably just going to get chopped up for a while. So make sure you've got your signal, make sure you know where your levels are. If you were looking for shorts here, then I would want to see a close on a daily basis below this blue zone and looking for a breakdown, retest and resumption lower. That of course would be the trigger there. But as it stands, I'm currently looking for longs, currently waiting to see a breakout of this downward sloping blue resistance line, and then you'll hear me go long for sure on the Russell 2K. The VIX, look at the VIX continuing to compress. So a lot of people out there at the moment, a lot of people quite salty about this. A lot of people think for sure that we're going to have a stock market crash and this big VIX explosion, but it's just not what the price action tells us at the moment, is it? As you can see here. So the Dow Jones is still sideways, still pushing this initial long, still looking to add along if we can get a breakout here. It looks to me like we're still in this washing machine for the Dow, and that could well continue for a little while longer. The Nasdaq is the exact same story as the Russell 2K, isn't it? We've still got this blue zone, still no real direction here, still trying to hold the blue zone as support, still looking to add longs on a breakout of this downward sloping purple resistance line. But for now, I think it was a good shout to get out of this trade. We could have definitely done a bit better managing this trade. I drew this trend line like this initially, and we could have got out here, but instead we chose to hold this trade and wait till that low was taken out. So we did give back a little bit more profit than we needed to on this trade, but that's okay. As the realist trader on YouTube, I'll always show you all of my wins, losses and mistakes. For now though, certainly glad I didn't continue to hold this trade, because we would have continued to give back even more profit. So currently sat on the sidelines from a position of power, waiting to see a breakout, and then we can look for adding longs on a breakout of this downward sloping purple resistance line. And lastly, the S&P 500. Are we going to get a bounce here? Are we going to get a bounce out of this daily cycle low? Are we going to look to break out from this purple downward sloping resistance line? Something like this. Is this coming over the coming days? That would be really nice, wouldn't it? That's what the cycle counts are telling us to expect. It's also what the VIX is telling us to expect. But as ever, we'll take everything one day at a time, see what the market can give. If you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're not already. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy your week. Take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.